there, Michael. What's been taking your eye in the Friday morning?
Yeah, realistically, all the talk
broadsheets
in the GAA world yesterday was about what looks like the impending exit of Colin McShane, going from the Tyrone fold, and just on the back of her own paper, Sean McGoldrick had a good story. Everyone was talking about it's the Brisbane Lions. It seems to be the Brisbane Lions, but it looks like the Adelaide Crows are in for him as well, which just shows the interest that's out there for him and the interest that's potentially out there for a lot of other kind of GAA players as well.
Yeah, we actually had Arthur O'D did a piece on this yesterday about the players that have left the game. Are you more worried about the players that have left? Say McShane is leaving for a reason that makes perfect sense, but the players that are leaving for sort of more tenuous reasons, in that I don't think the commitment and what it entails is attractive enough over the course of a year for them to just live normal lives, and I think that must be a factor with some players.
I'd be seriously worried, Johnny, genuinely. I'm not sure where we're going to be in 10 years' time, particularly with, in inverted commas, weaker counties where, you know, it's hard to see any like huge success on the horizon or silverware or anything like that. That piece that Arthur did, and there's been a few other different pieces done, where when you actually see it written down on paper, all the people that aren't involved, it's very, very worrying. There's lads who are ultra committed
just
to the
those
cause.
Four there as well,
yeah. Like Michael Quinlivan.
You're talking about fairly top counties here as well, like.
Oh yeah. Like Michael Quinlivan gone from Tipperary, basically the fulcrum of their attack. Donny Kingston and his brother Paul gone from Laois.
One of the best players for Laois.
Yeah, they're two best players in full forward line. Orr McNeil is just his second year topped out with Donegal, and I think that's Peter Cook with Galway. Like they're all high profile players. Gary Brennan with Clare, Darragh McVitie, Conor Mina, Killian Clark with Cavan. Like these counties are going to struggle to really operate at anything like the same level as they did in the previous year without these guys. You know, Dublin could afford to be missing a player, and they can bring it. It's like it was like the Kilkenny team in you know, the mid-noughties. Someone was out, someone else came in. It wasn't that big of a deal. But once you go down beyond Division 1, you go to 2, 3 and 4, if you're missing your big player, like, you're not going to write off the year, but it's going to be very, very difficult.
And it's also, I suppose, it's demotivating for the players that are there when they know that as hard as it was, I have to train here for 6 hard months for even less of a reward in all likelihood.
Yeah, and just like I was only thinking about, say, Gary Brennan opted out with Clare. Gary Brennan, one of them, I know him from college in UL, one of the most committed, dedicated players. Clare's best player, maybe Clare's best footballer ever, maybe, and definitely over the last 15 years, their most important player. I can only imagine what was going through Colin Collins' head when Gary told him that he wasn't opting in for 2020.
Probably
like,
not for
literally, yeah, you're like, it's heartbreaking stuff. I'm sure like Colin Collins will never admit it, and he's tried to make Clare a lot more sustainable and not relying on one player. But that's hard to take. It's hard to take.
The back of the Sun, McShane sailing, which is obviously that story about McShane likely leaving Tyrone. Here he goes, fed up Pogba, all set to op it. That's an exclusive in the Sun. And PFA abuse call, that's on the James McLean situation. The PFA has issued a statement on that. What else do we have?
Paul Pogba on the back of the Star. All yours for 160 million. So Manchester United are willing to sell Paul Pogba this month, but have slapped the €160 million price tag on the unsettled Star, which is interesting. Just a story inside, I thought, which was very interesting as well. Tennis's bad boy Nick Kyrgios, and he seems to get a very, very bad rap. Unbelievably talented, but Kyrgios leads bushfire effort. So he's, for every ace that he hits in the month of January, he's going to donate 200 Aussie dollars, equivalent to €125. He's got a load of other players to do it, and he's trying to organise an exhibition as well to help with the bushfire effort.
Yeah, there's a big article on that in one of the broadsheets, which we'll get to as well. This is the back of the Irish Daily Mail. Liverpool go a year unbeaten as Blade sunk. Parrott is primed to fill in for Croc Kane, says the article. But if you read it, it's kind of like saying Harry Kane is injured, Troy Parrott isn't. And whether or not Troy Parrott will do a lot for Spurs, we'll see, but they are playing Middlesbrough in the Cup at the weekend, which might offer him some sort of an opportunity. Really, really pivotal time for Troy. He turns 18 next month. Well, it's pivotal and it isn't. Like, he's loads of time, but it's interesting to see how this year works out for him.
Just
Michael.
The back of the Herald here, obviously Richard Dunn, columnist. I felt like walking out of the match, so this is just why VAR is ruining the game. Something that we might go into in a minute as well. And the other main headline is Reds march
that
ahead.
Screen there to our
Reds march ahead. Obviously Liverpool all conquering, and looking home and hosed.
Did you notice this morning how few people are on the road? You know, Leo's like get up early in the morning.
It's great.
Isn't it great?
It's great to just be able to coast in.
Kids are in bed, teachers and, you know, people who obviously are back on Monday are still on their holidays.
Because Dublin is a disaster when in full flow.
It is.
Like, it takes me 50 minutes to get in here.
Like their football team, you might say.
Yeah.
Back of the Indo, Reds kick on a 13-point lead. And this typical stuff as well, Aidan Fitzmaurice article with the Slovakia boss. Ireland play a typical British-style game, claims the Slovakia boss. I really hope those days will soon be behind us where this typical British-style game is no more.
The Irish Mirror here, I know it's something you want to go into, Johnny. FAI crisis meeting for LOI stars. Story by Paul O'Hare. A delegation of League of Ireland players will meet Minister for Sport Shane Ross and Junior Minister Brendan Griffin for crisis talks today. What exactly are we talking here, Johnny?
Well, you know those like images you see on Twitter where it's usually like a girl scantily clad and she's taking a selfie and it's like, what's on your mind? And you get these spoof replies. Yeah. So Ronan Cullen, the Go United fan, he replies, what do you want for 2020? And he replies, the First Division fixture list, because we still don't have it. We don't know how many teams are in the League of Ireland First Division because Limerick have gone defunct, so there are only 9 teams left. Shamrock Rovers B want to come into the league, but the First Division clubs don't want them to come in, and they have a legitimate kind of grievance, even though I don't really agree with them. But fair enough. On the Premier League, on the Premier Division level, these players are like, well, will their league be around next year with the FAI more or less, you know, on the verge of bankruptcy and so forth? So there's a photograph of Jack Byrne, I suppose, might be the most recognisable player in the league, but that piece will just detail that they're meeting the two politicians today just to ask, where are we at here? Because the league in that Oireachtas meeting last month was sort of, you know, consider this kind of afterthought, where Ross was like, Shane Ross was like, oh, if the FAI goes, the league would definitely go as well. I think, definitely, actually. Just you really didn't know. And professional football in this country to be treated as some sort of like unwanted third cousin is head-wrecking for me and for people who love the game. But we have here the Mirror, which you've actually done. This is the Times, and the Times is a really interesting interview, really interesting piece, rather, by Matt Williams, which is pretty grim, actually, really. There was I don't know if you saw, there was an image on Twitter yesterday of the maybe 100-year, like Australian weather record and the spikes in extreme weather in the last 10-20 years. But Matt Williams just says the scale of the bushfire catastrophe in Australia puts rugby in perspective. Obviously, you're not going to disagree with that, but he's a very interesting piece about players playing in Australia subsequent to the fires and the quality of the air that they'll play in. And he's quite a grim ending to the piece. He says, what I'm witnessing here is like nothing I've ever seen. Political ineptitude, wildfire, destruction, death air so polluted if it damages our lungs, and the possible suspension of elite sport. I'm not describing a corrupt banana republic. Tragically, I'm talking about Australia. So obviously Matt is pretty down on the government's response over there. It's horrific stuff, Michael, in fairness.
Unreal. I was in Sydney 2 years ago, and it was the hottest day on record in 50 years, I think. And I'd be listening in just to see what's been like since, and by all accounts I've heard like 5 or 6 times at least even hotter temperatures. It just seems to be getting hotter and hotter. It's kind of crazy over there. Yeah, I was in Melbourne before Christmas as well, and we'd unbelievably Irish weather there, which was a bit mad. It was raining quite a lot. Yeah, it was actually quite nice because it would cool you down a bit. But it's terrible what's going on.
We're going to try to forget climate change for the next hour and a half. Liverpool are leading most of the back pages this morning. Their 2-0 win over Sheffield United last night was live and off the ball with David Myler and Nathan Murphy.
Chips it into Salah, inside the D, back to Sadio Mane. Oh, Saint, he'll get another chance, and he was never going to miss. Sadio Mane scores Liverpool's second. What a wonderful goal from Liverpool, from one end of the pitch to the other in a flash. Stunning link-up from Mane and Salah. Salah unselfish with his return pass. It was initially stopped at close range from Henderson, but Mane picked himself up to smash it in from just a couple of yards out, and that is surely that. Liverpool are going back 13 points clear at the top of the table. Sadio Mane.
And the lovely tones of Nathan Murphy from last night, and now the lovely tones of him live from Liverpool. How are you, Nathan?
All right, lads, how's it going?
Some sort of a cafe area, is it you're in?
Yeah, I'm in the glamour surroundings of Liverpool Airport. It's actually quite nice to be here in the morning when it's quiet. Generally, I'm here at 11 o'clock on a Sunday night with about 200 Liverpool fans who've had the pleasure of drinking all day and you're the only sober person on the plane, which is usually quite an experience. So at least this time everybody's sober.
Last night, what was it like? Didn't get to see the game, obviously. It sounded quite routine, and texted my brother, a long-suffering Liverpool fan, not sure he's ever seen them win the league. I said, Michael, it's happening. He said, I think it is.
It's definitely happening. I don't think there's any question about that. Last night was probably the most straightforward win they've had in the entire campaign so far. Obviously got the early goal. It was a really bad mistake by Baldock. He fell over, whether it was the quality of the ball for Van Dijk or the ground was just slippy. But once Liverpool scored after 3 minutes, I think Sheffield United, 2 half chances in the 4 or 5 minutes afterwards. Dave McGoldrick had the only real shot on target of that first half when he forced Alisson into a decent enough save. But like you saw the statistic around Liverpool's passing, 969 passes. Sheffield United just couldn't get out of their half. Liverpool are so good now against teams that get stuck back. They just recycle possession. They're incredibly patient.
Was that a Premier League record, actually?
Since Opta stats began. So there may have been games of similar dominance, but it just shows how in control they were. And I think the big difference now with Liverpool from a few years ago is just how patient they are and how patient everyone is. There was no great panic when it was 1-0. You sort of sense if it stayed 1-0, they'd take that and they'd see the game out. Sheffield United had one chance right at the very end of the game where really McBurney should have scored. Mo Bezic came on, who's played for Everton, and even David Myler said it. He'd probably go and try and kick somebody now, a former Everton player, and he did. He nailed James Milner with about 7 or 8 minutes to go, and that kind of sparked a little bit of something out of Sheffield United. But I think they'll be very disappointed. They didn't do themselves justice.
How are their Irish players?
Poor. Dave McGoldrick still doesn't look like scoring a goal. Unfortunately, last night is one of those nights where even if he was at his very best, like Van Dijk had him in his pocket. They played 2 up front, so they went with a bit of ambition, but they just couldn't get out from the back. And like this is something going back to the start of the season when people were wondering why they were playing such a really, really high line with pretty much all 10 outfield players in the opposition half. And remember Damien Delaney talking about it, saying they're trying to suffocate the opposition. It means if you win the ball back, there's no out ball because there's so much pressure on you. All you can do is lump it forward, and that's all they did. And every single time, Van Dijk, Gomez picked it up, started it again. So McGoldrick didn't get a sniff. John Egan, I didn't think, did anything wrong. And the Stevens had 3 or 4 chances maybe to get a decent delivery in. Didn't quite happen for him, but they were just totally outclassed. And 13 points clear, game in hand, in complete cruise control.
Yeah, we've an interview with Adam Lallana that you did coming up. What's the story there? What can we expect in terms of what is the vibe in Anfield at the moment? Obviously, Lallana's future in slight doubt at the moment.
Yeah, he's had a contract in the summer. So, talking about this with Myler before the game, as to what you do. He can obviously negotiate with clubs at the moment, but I'd be surprised if he did anything before the summer because, as he says during the interview, he's playing with what you'd have to say right now is the best club in the world. And he's going to get some game time. So why have your eye and your focus elsewhere? Whether they give him a new deal, I'm not quite sure. But he's a squad player. Even to replace a squad player at the moment probably costs you 30, 40 million quid. They did have Minamino there last night who signed from Salzburg. He's probably going to make his debut in the derby at the weekend. So that'll be a little bit of a talking point as the season goes on. The vibe at Anfield is just in such contrast to what it was 2 or 3 years ago, where there was so many nerves. I remember commentating on the defeat to Crystal Palace, which is the last time Liverpool lost at Anfield, 51 games ago.
Wow.
2.5 years, and they were beaten by Palace. And it was the most typical Liverpool defeat at the time, where they went in front through a Coutinho free kick. Benteke comes back, scores a couple of really cheap goals. And at that stage, Liverpool were blowing leads time and time again. Every time they went in front, there was a nervousness. Nobody trusted them at all. Now, I won't say it's a party over there just yet, but there's just complete confidence that whenever they go in front, they're going to win. And I think I saw a statistic that the last 38 times they've scored first at Anfield, they've won the game.
That's insane. If it's not a party, it's kind of like counting down to the weekend type vibe where you know it's coming and it's nearly there. David Myler on commentary told a yarn about being on the phone to Jordan Henderson as Brendan Rodgers told him he could leave Liverpool a few years ago. We're going to play that clip later. Gaz O'Sullivan tweeted, "There's absolutely no way this is a true story." Is it true, Nathan?
Well, he says it's true. That was my initial reaction as well. We spoke a lot about Jordan Henderson before the match, and it was some really good stuff from David Myler because he probably knows him as well as anybody. They were best mates since they were 17, 18, growing up at Sunderland. Spoke about how they had a rivalry when they were at Sunderland. There were 2 lads probably going for the same position. How even Henderson, as good as he was told at 17, 18 he could leave Sunderland. Only his father came in and said, would he give him another chance? And Sunderland did. Same situation at Liverpool, where I think everyone knows that Brendan Rodgers told him he could go to Fulham, and not he could go, that he should go to Fulham. Henderson said, I'm not leaving. And David Myler says that he was on the phone to Jordan Henderson when Brendan Rodgers walked into the room. Henderson didn't hang up. And that Myler heard the entire conversation.
I believe that.
Henderson, I'm going nowhere.
We look at Jordan Henderson now, and it's like, what if Jordan Henderson had played for a club that sort of plateaued 6th or 7th in the table? He's been hugely important for Liverpool, but it's kind of these, I suppose, where your career goes. I think you have a plane to catch, have you?
I do.
Is it gone?
Ryanair waits for no man.
No.
It better not be, Johnny. If I'm stuck in Liverpool Airport for the day, God damn.
I love the way you looked out the window there. Oh, no, it's still there. It's grand.
No, there's a Flybe there. I haven't seen my Ryanair. Maybe it's around
All
the
the best,
side.
Nathan.
Cheers, lads.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
There's Nathan. Yeah, the life of the... you wouldn't get this so much because obviously you're more with the... So you'd get your trips to Cheltenham and the international rules, I suppose. That be your trips?
Yeah, it was at the Melbourne Cup actually.
Yes, that as well.
November, which was
up to no good.
Unbelievable.
Went from there to Vegas.
I went from Vegas
to there
and ended up staying in the Crown Promenade, which is connected to the Crown Casino, which is the biggest casino in the Southern Hemisphere. So I just literally couldn't leave casinos. And I'm actually reading the book, around the film 21 at the moment.
Oh, wow.
Blackjack is one of my favourite pastimes, I have to say.
It's very interesting. You really have a lot of degenerate interest, Michael.
That coming from Johnny Ward now, that's very rich.
Speaking of degenerate interest, the darts again, from tyre fitting to new world champion, Peter Wright. This is in The Guardian. And I love this old photo. The first time I saw Peter Wright play, this photo popped up somewhere, and obviously he's got these ridiculously exotic hairstyles, but this was him back in 1995, 24 years ago, when he didn't look quite the man he does now. That's a nice piece in The Guardian, and another piece in The Guardian as well, which is worth a read, is Jonathan Wilson's analysis on the Solskjaer situation on page 43. Solskjaer's game of patience is running out of time. United should be better than this. What do we have elsewhere, Michael? The Examiner's always good for the sport. And
that's to go into serious detail on it. Obviously, to have about Liverpool here kicking on, relentless strides to move ever closer to title destiny. There's a really interesting story inside, though, by Stephen Barry. It's the tip captain who became world bodybuilding champion.
Wow.
It's a former tip ladies football captain, Leanne Barrett. It's just a really, really interesting story. And they just have a picture of her. They have a picture of her here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it in her bodybuilding garb as well. Very, very interesting story. Something different as well, especially for this time of the year. But yeah, it's not your typical.
That's a stark contrast in her Tipperary playing days.
Isn't it just the old baggy Tipperary jersey compared to, the old the bikini? But it's an interesting story, something different, particularly around this time of the year.
I'm struggling to hold the paper here, which in contrast her physique is making me feel a little bit obsolete. Racing Post into the weekend. We have a big weekend, Naas action, Tolworth Hurdle tomorrow at Sandown. Naas, we have Envoy Allen. I'm sure he's taking your eye.
Yeah, without a doubt, yeah. There's something else here that's taking my eye though too, is Tom Segal and Paul Keeley and a few others from the Racing Post going through our punting resolutions.
For New Year's was just a bad dream, says Nicky Henderson.
Yeah, that's about Champ, I suppose. Yeah, it was disappointing, but at least he lives to fight another day, But I'm looking to find out what your punting resolutions are, Johnny.
You gotta record every bet. And I have a problem with this in that I could be flat out doing this for 6 months and then I miss a week, and it's like the gym. I could go for 3 months and miss a week and I just don't go back. So be just wedded to it this year. I've started off this year by recording every bit of work I do because I'm a freelance journalist, so I need to know where I'm working and when I'm slacking off during the year and blah blah blah. And the same with betting, but it's not easy, Michael. It's it's not that easy to get bets on anymore, and obviously discipline is a big thing, but it's getting bets on is, you might fancy a horse at 12 to 1 overnight and it's 6 to 1 the following morning, and that happens a lot, and that's frustrating. But what about yourself?
4 words. Always get the value, as Barney Curley
always
said.
Get the value.
It's always all about the value. If you don't get the value, you're at none. If you think you have an edge on the bookmakers and you think you have knowledge that makes a price seem more attractive than it should be, then I'd say bet.
Put your money where your mouth is. Then what do you like for Cheltenham, or do you have any fancies for
this time of the year?
No,
I think it's a bit of a disaster. Shack and Poursois would be a good price for Cheltenham.
5 to 1 is available.
Yeah.
I would agree with you there. Will you be over in Cheltenham this year?
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, looking forward to it already. Actually, it's one of the highlights of the year. I hear them talking about the possibility of extending it to 5 days.
I'm going to write about this today, and I cannot stress how much I'd be against this. Like, I honestly would not go for 5 days, partly in protest, partly because I don't bloody well want to. Like, the 4 days, I don't socialise at Cheltenham anymore because I can't get up early in the morning and work throughout the day. It's just too tough for me. But even if I weren't working, I wouldn't be able to do the 4 days. I thought 3 days was perfect. And, like, does anyone really need a mayor's novice hurdle? Does anyone need a mayor's hurdle? In my mind,
it's
not
diluted
really,
enough as it is. Like, realistically, if I was telling someone to go over, I'd tell them to go over either Tuesday or Friday. Not that I'd write off the 2 days in between, but to me, Tuesday is unbelievably exciting, and then obviously Gold Cup Day is unbelievably exciting. I'd take or leave. I could easily merge Wednesday and Thursday together. Just
going back to the Independent as well, which has loads of stuff in the sports pages at the back today. We did reference this previously, but that article Ewan McKenna wrote, Darts Appeal in Fun and Integrity, this is well worth the read in the sense that I suppose Ewan as a journalist is kind of most known for being on the side of right and takes on what he would see as perceived kind of woes and issues in sport in terms of integrity and so forth. But Ewan has a piece here on page 50 which basically says the game of the people is real and relatable alternative to sports besmirched by grime. Now it's an interesting piece. When you think besmirched by grime, you think the darts, like it's quite grimy in its own way, but it's raw and it's real.
Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff there. It's basically looking back at an interview that Ewan did with Mick McKenna, and people that don't follow darts wouldn't know Mick McKenna, but the first ever televised
just to interject there, Michael was absolutely aghast that I couldn't reference this Mick McKenna fella at the start of the show, and then he goes, did you not see the 9-dart finish? Mick McKenna was somewhere in the background that time.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
1990 BDO World Championship, the first ever televised 9-darter. This is the biggest dart moment of all time.
I was 7 or 8 years of age.
I was 4.
4. Were you watching it?
No, but I've seen it a million times since. But Mick McKenna was basically playing against Paul Lim when Paul Lim got the first ever televised 9-darter. Paul Lim, he was Asian, but he was playing as an American. And Mick McKenna was in the background, the first ever televised 9-darter in the World Championship. Yeah, and Ewan met him in Newbridge. I think in 2010, he says here, but just he was kind of regaling him with all like mad darting stories. Like, for example, he recalled how he could beat Jockey Wilson, famous Scottish dart thrower, former world champion, but only in the mornings when his opponent had the shakes. And it was little wonder as he'd witnessed the Scot run up a $5 bill in 10 days at a Toronto hotel, mostly courtesy of his habit of ordering Bacardi. And it's just mad. Remember
that is mad.
Remember not the 9 o'clock news sketch that they did. Ewan has the names mentioned here.
He's a very good writer, Ewan.
Yeah, Die, Fat Belly, Gut Bucket, and Tommy, Even Fatter Belly, Belcher. You know, and they were just drinking pints and taking shots. And darts has changed totally. Like, you wouldn't see anybody drinking on stage now. Basically, it's not that saying it's an athlete's game or anything like that, but they do take it far more seriously. There's far more money at stake now as well. It's like, was it 600 grand? Was it 600?
Yeah, 600 grand for a snake bite.
Huge money, like, and not even that. It's all the endorsements and everything that will come with it. Your Premier League place, the amount he can dine on exhibitions for the rest of his career because he's a world champion now. You know?
You were saying to me there, like, he met Mick McKenna. It reminded me of Dion Fanning had an article where he was in Newcastle one day and he was on the bus and there were a couple of Geordies talking to each other and one of them got off at one stop anyway, and the other lad who was talking to your man goes over to Dion, who he'd never met before, and he goes, did you see that? And he goes, no. He goes, that lad only used to drink with Jimmy Nail. It's just like, and Dion was like, right, so he used it as like the fulcrum for his article. Mick McKenna was only there for a 9-dart finish.
He was there for plenty more as well. But it's very interesting.
It's 8:10 a.m. Friday morning. We're talking football next on OTB AM. Liverpool continue the run to top the Premier League again last night with a 2-0 win at Anfield against Sheffield United. I think it's happening. I think the league is coming back to Liverpool. The game was live and off the ball, and afterwards we caught up with the one and only Adam Lallana.
Well, Adam, 19 wins out of 20 to start